Hello viewers at home, and thank you once again for tuning on to our show today. My name is Chef Andy, showing you a bit of some beautiful things from the Central Province today. We're going to be making a nice beautiful amount of dishes today, but before I get to that point, we'll begin by introducing our ingredients. So from the very front, I've got some cloves of garlic, about a large knob of fresh ginger there, already peeled. You'll also require one large red chili, about 1 cube of stock cube, some fresh thyme and some fresh parsley. Also make a record for some 2 medium-sized tomatoes, some salt for seasoning, a nice small cup of some kernel corn, 1 large onion, and a bit of some green pepper there. You're also going to require some baby spinach and some pumpkin leaves, about 2 pieces of potato, and last but not least, your goat rib, and lastly, your oil for frying. Before we get to the very simple technique of making these very simple dishes, we are going to allow you to stretch for a little bit, and we'll catch you in a short while. Welcome back viewers. For those of you who are just catching up, we're working on 3 very simple things today. I'm going to be showing you how to make a goat wet fry. We're also going to be making a very simple mukimo, and I'm also going to show you how to fry up some baby spinach. But we're going to start off with the process that takes the longest. So into a shallow pan, proceed to add your potatoes and proceed to top up with some water. Of course, always making sure to get to just the tip of the top of your potatoes and making sure they're almost completely submerged. Now we can proceed to have our gas going on the side here. And now very simply proceed to season with some salt. Also very important addition, especially when you're boiling potatoes. Remember, this is a particular step where you're actually going to get a bit of flavor in there. So simply proceed to leave that to continue boiling on the side. Remember, we're going to allow the water to completely simmer. And now next up, we will proceed to start our goat. So already my pot is on the heat. So we're going to start the process very simply by chopping up 1 large size onion. So simply cut that into half. Proceed to cut some very thin slits right over the top. Cut once almost through the center. Proceed to just chop that as finely as you can. Proceed to turn over and finish the last piece. Making sure to always try to get as much out of your onion. And one particular trick I like to use is to take the stems out before I begin to chop. It will always allow for you to get a nice, beautiful, even chop. So proceed to do the same for the second half. Once right through the middle once more. Proceed to finish that up. Turn over and proceed to chop right over that stem root end. Simple as that. Now we're going to proceed to begin to cook our goat very simply by adding a bit of oil to our pan once it's hot. And we'll proceed to move our onions into the pot. Very important also to always give your pan a bit of time to heat up. Remember, that allows for you to really cook down the cholesterol content of your oils. Now proceed to also chop up your tomatoes. Also very simple trick of getting the stem end out. Nice small paring knife. Hold it right towards the tip of your thumb. And very simply by making an incision, proceed to go around that stem end and discard the rest. Proceed to do the same for your second piece. And very simply proceed to chop your tomatoes, making sure to get a nice beautiful rough texture. Remember, you are going to be frying this up with the onions, and it may actually want to cook into a paste, so no stress about how big they are. Need to do the same thing for the second piece. Now, one particular good characteristic of some ripe tomatoes, especially for a recipe such as this, it will save you cooking time. It will allow for also a nice, beautiful, even flavor. And second of all, it always gives a nice, beautiful finish, especially from that beautiful red color from the ripeness. So mix everything together. Of course, at this stage, you're still frying all your ingredients at high heat. Now, while that proceeds, we're going to begin by adding our stock cube. Also chop up about 2 cloves of garlic, but very importantly, proceed to dry your board. Remember, it's never safe to work with a wet board. It does transfer quite a bit of bacteria, and you can easily cut yourself by slipping. So begin by just roughly chopping your garlic. Making sure to try to get a nice even cut, and you can only achieve that by going through your garlic about 3 or 4 times. You can proceed to also add that to your pot. Of course, always mixing through as you continue, enabling your ingredients to mix through nice and evenly. Now remember, this particular stage, you will actually always use your aromatics to begin by building the flavor. So I'm also going to throw in about 3 sprigs of some fresh thyme. And by this stage, your tomatoes should actually start to form almost a paste. You can also aid in pressing down your tomatoes with a spoon while mixing through. That always also allows for it to break up a little faster. But very important to mention, never leave your board or your pot unattended at this stage, because it could burn very quickly. And now, very simply, I'm just going to begin to slice up some of my ginger roots. Of course, always making sure to start by roughing as rough as possible, and proceed to go over once more with your knife. That should take you anywhere between a minute to a minute and a half. Very simple process. If you do also have a mincer or food processor in your kitchen, you can alternatively just throw everything in there. It will always give you a nice, beautiful consistency, and of course save you the effort of chopping. Right, once your ginger is nicely coarsely chopped, proceed to add to your pot. All you need to do now is mix through. And as soon as your pot starts to dry out completely, always very handy to have a bit of water around. Proceed to add about half a cup, mixing through very gently. And we can proceed to allow that to come to the simmer and allow for also the liquid to reduce. But while that continues, we also have a pepper that we will be incorporating. So very, very simple technique of chopping up a pepper. Proceed to break off that piece of stem. Very simply with a sharp knife, begin by holding your pepper with the stem side at the bottom and proceed to go round your pepper. Remember, this will always save you the effort of struggling too long to take out your seeds. So this process will always allow for you to get out that beautiful flesh and make it easier to discard that inside. Proceed also to discard any of your seeds. And very simply with a sharp knife, proceed to cut right through, almost through the middle part, making sure to take out the white flesh. And for those of you who may also want to incorporate it, remember, very important to mention, for particular peppers such as a green pepper, it will actually give a very, very sharp and unpleasant taste, especially if you don't take out your inside fleshes, and this particularly will actually taint the flavor of your dish. So always begin by cleaning your pepper out. But this case may not apply for all peppers because for instance, with the red and yellow peppers, they actually come with a bit of sweetness, so it may actually not be so important to do so. So very simply, with your sharp knife, proceed to julienne your green pepper. Making sure to always look for a nice consistent slice every time. And as I always mention, working with a sharp knife will always make your life a little better, allows you to also work a little faster and get a nice consistent cut every time. Right, so our sauce is almost now cooked down completely. But very importantly, give it a mix once more, using your spoon to press into those tomato chunks. And as soon as you can almost not see any of the tomato chunks floating through your sauce, and just when the liquid is almost dried up, very simply proceed to add your pieces of rib. And proceed by mixing that through. And now at this stage, very, very important to mention, always give your sauce a bit of time to continue to cook down until the liquid is almost reduced, and only add liquid in small amounts. This way you may be able to actually avoid your dish from cooling off very quickly, and also it avoids you from adding too much liquid at once. So very important to mention, when you're looking for a wet fry, remember you're actually looking for a beautiful balance of consistency between your sauce. It should not be too dry as a dry fry, and it also should not also respond, or rather look very similar to a stew. So very important to mention, be very vigilant with adding your stock or your any liquid particularly, because it could actually be very hard to cook that down, and you may actually also overcook your dish. So we're going to allow that to simmer on the side, and I'm also going to just move that to the side completely. Very important to also mention, allow any particular meat dishes to cook with the lid removed, unless you're actually pressure cooking, because this will actually get your meat to turn into a very, very gray, almost very, very metallic color, and this may not actually give the dish a bit of beautiful presentation right at the very end. So we're just going to mix that, and we'll allow that to continue cooking until the liquid is reduced, and proceed to also add your liquid slowly, small quantities at a time. That will also allow for you to not add too much. So now, next up to our third and final pan, we're going to make our baby spinach. So very, very simple process of doing this. Proceed to always clean your vegetables, as I always mentioned. Allow them to dry off before proceeding to remove the stems. It's always going to allow for you to avoid losing too much nutrient and of course losing too much beautiful color from your vegetables. So very simply, I'm just going to start by layering one leaf over the other, making sure to break off any of the excess stems. And these are particularly very soft. Remember, they also cook very fast, so you may want to actually work a little faster when working with your baby spinach. And also to mention, they do also come at a little bit of a higher cost than your regular spinach, so you may actually want to be very vigilant when working with baby spinach. Remember, overcooking this will get them very, very gray, and it actually will lose out the color. I'll also mention that you may not want to chop this up on your board, because you will actually notice a very big taint on your board. It will actually ooze out that beautiful green liquid, and this particularly is the source of your vitamin E. So very important to remember those small pointers. So into a hot pan, a bit of oil, small clove of garlic. So for this, I'm just going to slice it through the middle and just throw that into the pan. Give that anywhere between a minute to a minute and a half to just flavor your oil. Proceed also to turn your pan around, allowing for your garlic to completely coat the surface of your pan. And very, very simply proceed to add your baby spinach, spreading out your leaves. And this will allow for the heat to permeate really, really easily. Allows also for your spinach to wilt very, very gently, as opposed to piling everything up on each other. And of course, very important to also make sure any particular excess stems should be removed at this stage. And very importantly, season with a bit of salt. And using a pair of tongs, proceed to just toss those in your hot pan, just allowing for a little bit of coating from the oil. And as you can see, it gets a nice, beautiful, shiny color. Remember, overcooking this will actually lose this beautiful color. So as soon as you achieve your nice, beautiful color and your spinach is completely coated, proceed to just turn off your heat completely. Spread out your pieces of spinach over the top of your pan and just allow for them to continue wilting very, very gently with that heat from the pan. That should give it quite a bit of time to tenderize very, very nicely and give it a nice, pleasurable taste. But before we get to the last and final stage of finishing these very simple dishes, we're going to take a break, clean our station, and we'll catch you after a very short break. Welcome back, viewers. If you're just tuning in, you've actually missed out on a very, very simple technique of beginning a very simple dry fry. But we're going to finish off the dish by finishing off our Mukimo dish first. So Mukimo is by explanation, it's a very, very typical pudding kind of consistency of combining some pumpkin leaves, some corn and some potatoes. Remember, this is a particularly very, very fond dish here in Kenya. And for some of you who may not already know how to make it, you can also have a look out there. There's quite a bit of recipes and alterations. So this is not the only particular method you may use, but it's among one of the many. So very, very simply, I'm going to grab some of my pumpkin leaves. Remember, your potatoes are now almost fully cooked, but we're going to incorporate some of our pumpkin leaves. And I'll begin by just slicing those into some nice thick chunks, and we'll proceed to add those to our pot. Now proceed to press those into your liquid. Remember, particularly for this dish, especially for ingredients that you may actually steam together and serve or combine for the same particular consistency, very, very handy to always just try and steam everything in one pot. Remember, it first of all saves you time and cost, and second of all, it really allows for a beautiful marrying of flavors in there. So we're just going to make sure to press our pumpkin leaves right to the bottom of the pot, making sure that they're completely submerged. You can also at this stage proceed to check for your doneness of your potatoes by using a fork. And if you can still be able to pick up your potato with your fork, then you know it's actually still not cooked. But if it's still a bit of a difficulty getting each piece out of the water, or it slides off very, very easily, then that is actually your cue to begin finishing off the dish. So at this stage, we're going to proceed to add our kerneled corn and proceed to also give that a quick mix. And now for that to continue blending together, that should take about another 3 or 4 minutes, just allowing for you to finish off your wet fry. So I'm just going to slide those pots across. And now as you can see, the goat is nicely cooking through. It's now almost tender completely and the meat is almost falling off the bone. This is a very, very good cue to begin adding your green pepper. And also proceed to chop up 1 whole chili, but simply begin by slicing through and using your sharp knife, proceed to almost cut at an angle, making sure to detach the stalk with the seeds. Remember, the seeds are what give your chili quite a bit of kick, so this is a very, very good technique, especially if you're going to be serving chili to your kids. It will always take out the heat aspect of the chili, and it actually now in turn becomes a very, very good additional flavor. So just julienne those very, very roughly. Add those to your pot, and using a spoon, mix through once more. And now you can proceed to grab a nice big handful of your parsley. And now very simply, by pressing that onto the board, always making sure to pull your leaves to one side and the stems to the other side. Proceed to arrange the stems one over the other. And always by making sure to hold the stem ends away from the knife, begin by finely chopping your fresh parsley and proceed to stop as soon as you get to the stems. Mix those into your pot. And now while finishing off your dish, also something very handy to always do at this stage, proceed to season with some salt. Mix through. And now all you need to do at this stage is allow for your liquid to continue to reduce, just up until you have just enough amount of liquid in there to serve as a sauce on the side, and just something to allow for you to keep the dish nice and moist. And now while that finishes off, I'm just going to proceed to take out our Mukimo mixture. And very, very simply, I like to use a sieve to get that liquid out completely. So a very, very simple technique. Proceed to hold your pot over your sink and very simply tilt sideways, allowing some of the liquid to escape, but always reserve a little more liquid in your pot. Remember, this will always aid in making your mashing a little easier. And while holding your pot over your burner, proceed to press into your potatoes first. and proceed to mash until your chunks of potatoes are completely disappeared. And for those of you who may also want a nice beautiful tip, you can also throw your pumpkin leaves in a blender once steamed gently, and it will actually give you a nice beautiful green paste. And remember now, for that little bit of liquid that you had reserved in your pot, this is basically where it really comes into play. So all you're going to do is allow your pot to sit probably even under your smallest range. Allow for the liquid to continue evaporating and just proceed to give it a mix. This will always allow for your liquid to proceed to reduce completely, also allowing you to get a beautiful even mixture and a nice beautiful heavy pudding-like consistency. Right, so once your potatoes are completely mashed through, you can proceed to discard your masher. And for those of you who may not know where to find that device, it's a very, very simple kitchen tool that you may be able to find at your retail stores or even within the CBD. Any particular kitchenware or utensilware shop that you may be able to find should be able to assist you. Now, just to bring your attention back to our goat, the liquid is now about almost towards the base of the pot, so you should actually just have enough liquid to keep your pot from drying out. But of course, the liquid should of course now be totally reduced and be almost below the content of your pot. And once that's done, we're going to proceed to turn off our heat completely. Just quick wipe off some sweat. And now we're going to proceed very simply to plate. Remember, as I mentioned, one particular beautiful thing about the liquid you allowed to sit back in your pot with the Mukimo mixture, remember, that always allows for you to steam up the mixture before getting your final product. Also allows for your dish to continue to stay very, very soft and allows it to be very, very dry as well. Right, now that's simple and done. We're going to turn off the heat on the pot completely. And very, very simply, we're going to proceed to plate. So I'm going to be plating in this very, very simple plate. As you can see, we had the spinach that we did a little earlier. But very important to mention, as soon as you're done cooking something as delicate as this, you may want to move it onto a plate to avoid it from overcooking or even discoloring in your hot pan. So using a daring mold, remember this I use a lot on the show, it only just aids you in plating. Remember, this is certified to be used around food, so you may actually want to avoid using anything that's not particularly certified to be used in the kitchen. This is a very good tip and a very, very good assister, especially when plating a dish. So we're just going to begin the process by scooping our Mukimo mixture into the ring. Of course, making sure to begin by pressing down the first spoon and proceed to scoop the rest over the top. Proceed to always give it a bit of a height by scooping one last spoonful right over the top of your mold. Press back towards the center of the mold. Remember, this always makes it easier to remove. And very simply, using your hands, proceed to lift. And now for the last and final dish, your wet fry. So very, very simple trick to plate this. Always begin by moving your chunks of meat almost to one side of your pot while holding it at an angle, and just proceed to scoop. Allow for the liquid to just pour back into your pot and proceed to move that onto your plate. Now that particularly would make a nice beautiful portion for one adult lunch size portion. But very important to remember, a beautiful finish to your dish always shows a bit of emphasis and a bit of enthusiasm. So we're just going to press that right over the top. And your wet fry goat with mukimo and some baby spinach is as simple as done. I will also remind you that for the recipes we've used for the show, these are basically for demo, so you can actually also check out our previous videos on our YouTube channel. That's BrandPlus TV. You will be able to actually pick up some nice beautiful tips from the lunch and dinner guide segments of this particular show. But for now, I will bid you farewell, wishing you a nice beautiful lunch, and until the next time we see each other, see you soon and stay safe.